Discipline is about putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems. And if you're not doing that, then it doesn't matter how many cold plunges, how many CrossFit workouts you do, how much this, that, the other thing you do. If you are not addressing your major problems in life, none of that stuff really matters.
Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
What's going on, Eagles? Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show. I'm Joey, and today we're joined by a very special guest, the most disciplined man in the world, Craig Ballantyne. Craig, what's going on?
Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun, guys. Always good to hang with the Fuel Hunt crew.
The most disciplined man in the world is not a title that I gave you just for this show. It's an earned title that you have, right? From decades of hard work, becoming an author, multi-seven-figure entrepreneur, coaching other entrepreneurs do the same, right?
Yeah, I got it because I was productive. And so I know that there's a lot of people in special forces that probably listen to this that might be offended by me even claiming to be that. And so maybe I like to say I'm the most productive civilian you might ever meet. And the way the whole shtick got going is that I bought a business about 12 or 13 years ago. So I was running two businesses at the same time, and I was cranking out all this content. And this guy, Ed O'Keefe in Chicago, guy has 6 kids, so he's super disciplined and productive too. But he said to me, man, you're so productive. You're like the most productive person in the world. And then like the second time he said it, he goes, you're the most disciplined person in the world, because you associate the two, right? Which is the main thing that everybody needs to take away is if somebody's productive, it's very unlikely that, they're just on some, Adderall bender all the time. They're probably organized, they're disciplined, they're structured in their life, and therefore the outcome is productivity. And that's where everything started. And then I must have mentioned it to a couple people, or Ed did, or something. He was on my podcast, I was on his, and that's how it all kind of came around. And
Sure.
I have like a different definition of discipline than most people do, because most people probably think, well, discipline is like, going balls hard and, sacrificing and doing like crazy hard things. And it is to a point, but I have a little bit of a nuance to it.
And what's that nuance? If you don't mind.
Oh, you want to know? You want to know?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So the whole nuance came, I've always believed this, but recently it just, man, this example just is crazy. So I had a friend who's done some of these online challenges multiple times. And, this is a guy who was already very successful financially. He had 6-pack abs. He had a wife. He had 3 kids. And, an entrepreneur. He's written a book. And this guy is really, you would think like the guy's pretty dialed in. Well, he is, but a whole bunch of people on the internet that he'd never met before convinced him that he wasn't disciplined because he hadn't done one of the challenges that you see online. So he went and did this challenge and got a bunch of claps on his back from people that he's never met before. And then he's like, man, I got to go and do it again because maybe he didn't get enough claps on his back or something from, these people he's never met who don't really matter in his life. And he went and did one of these discipline challenges again. And when he finished the second one, his wife left him and walked out on him with his 3 kids. And so he was chasing another person's definition of discipline. And to me, that is one of the most undisciplined things that you can do. And my nuanced version of discipline is, are you putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem? I don't care if you cold plunge, but every single day for 3 minutes, but you and your wife, sleep in different rooms, like because you're not in love anymore. Like, to me, I don't really like the cold plunging it's not a discipline thing. It's an avoidance behavior. And so it's not about hard things. And, it is about hard things, but it's not about things that a lot of people consider hard. And you could also take a look at like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was the most disciplined golfer in the world in 2000 up to 2007. Very successful golfer, the world's best, unimaginable results. And yet the guy did not have discipline in his personal life. So just because you can cold plunge and just because you can hike with a 60-pound rucksack on your back for 4 hours, while doing it on a handstand, doesn't mean that you're disciplined in all areas of life. It is not a guaranteed transferable characteristic. And what you need to do when it comes to discipline is figure out what really matters to you and figure out what your personal level 10 problems are. And then you need to go and put a level 10 effort into those problems. So, the last little example I'll give of this came from my time with Bedros when he ran the Fitness Business Summit, and I would speak at the Fitness Business Summit every year. And we would look out into the audience, and let's say it was like 2017. I'd look out in the audience and I'd see, the 500 or 600 trainers that were there, and they had 10% or 9% body fat, and they had $9 in their bank account. And they would come to this event for a couple of days and learn sales and marketing. And then on the breaks, they would go out and talk to other trainers about workouts and nutrition. That's always how it was. You learn all the sales and marketing, and all you do on the breaks is talk about workouts and nutrition. And then they go home and they put all the sales and marketing stuff on the shelf, even though it's their level 10 problem because they were broke. And they would take the nutrition and workout program advice that they got from, Joe Blow trainer from Kansas on the break, and they would go super hard on that. And they would come back the next year and they'd have 8% body fat and $8 in their bank account. And the cycle would just continue every year. They were putting a level 10 effort into a level 1 problem. Going from 9% body fat to 8% body fat did nothing in these people's lives. It made their lives no better. And they put a level 1 effort into their level 10 problem, which was making money in their gym. And so they were on the borderline of broke all the time. And you would look at that person and go, wow, they're super disciplined. They're in great shape. Well, they're not super disciplined. They're undisciplined because they had avoidance behavior. And so at the end of the day, after all that rambling, guys, what I want to say to everybody is that discipline is about putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems. And if you're not doing that, then it doesn't matter how many cold plunges, how many CrossFit workouts you do, how much this, that, the other thing you do. If you are not addressing your major problems in life, none of that stuff really matters. And that is the end of my sermon.
And
It's
Rand, yeah, I think that, yeah, Drew.
well, I can already tell this podcast is going to ruffle some feathers, especially in today's day and age. And being that it's almost like we glorified discipline and glorified the cold plunges and the sauna and the rucks, and they're real sexy to go do and then post on Instagram. But like you said, a lot of people are avoiding the real problems in their life. And Joey said something to me years ago when we started this, and it's like, you can't spend all day shuffling papers and say you put in the work, right? Like a lot of people show up to the office, answer emails, and we go, wow, I worked hard today. But realistically, if you're not putting in the real hard work and solving those level 10 problems, then you're actually not even being disciplined at all.
Do you know who the world's most disciplined man was? It's not me. You guys want to know who I truly believe was the world's most disciplined man?
Michael Jordan.
No, but I mean, he's a great example, right? He has gambling addiction, and he made a lot of money playing basketball. He won all those championships. He's done incredible things after, but he didn't have discipline when it came to a vice. So, he's not, he might be in your top 10,000 most disciplined people of all time, or top 1,000, maybe even top 100, but no, it's not him. It's a man who died recently, actually. It's Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger was the world's most disciplined man in my eyes. And so if you take a look at Charlie Munger's life, he is a billionaire. He did what he wanted. Like, he set up his life so that it ran the way that he wanted. I believe, I can't remember the number of kids he had. I believe it was 5. He lived to 99.9 years old. He was so close to 100. I think he died in December and his birthday was in February. So he's like 99.9 years old. He mentored the world's richest man, Warren Buffett, who was the richest man for a long time, but not anymore. He's happily married for a long, long time. Like, everything that most people want in life, Charlie Munger had. So he was the most disciplined man, and that's obviously completely counterintuitive to most of the people listening. But what did he not achieve?
Yeah,
and he did it through discipline. And if you don't know this about Charlie, is that when he was 30 to 35 years old, he was broke, and his 8-year-old son had died from leukemia, I believe it was. So this guy was down and out. when he was 30 something, and he turned it all around through his discipline. And you know, he lived a long time. Everybody who's listening to this wants to live a long time. Charlie Munger, check. He had a lot of money. Everybody would like to have a lot of money. Check. You know, he just didn't have six-pack abs. In fact, Charlie Munger was one of those people who said that he didn't want to waste any energy exercising. So he didn't have six-pack abs, but other than that, he had everything that pretty much most people listening to this would want. You know, happy marriage. You know, his second marriage was happy. I think he got divorced in his first one, but he had a happy marriage. He had kids, all this sort of stuff, left an amazing legacy. And it's because he was very disciplined in his approach to life. It's just not the discipline that we think about today. But the last thing I'll say is that you should arrange your discipline based on the outcome, the big outcome you want to achieve. The big outcome that you probably want to achieve, those of you listening to this, is that you probably do want to have a great relationship. You probably want to have a great family life if you know, choosing kids is your life path. You want to have a very rewarding career, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're not an entrepreneur. You want to have significant financial success. You want to have significant financial freedom for your family. You want to have the ability to do what you want when you want. So all of the things that you do that you consider disciplined should put you on the path to achieving those things. And if you take a look at the things that are, you know, considered disciplined today, you know, the cold plunge just always just comes to mind, right? Like a cold plunge is neither necessary nor sufficient for achieving your major outcome goals. So if you do it, it's not sufficient. That if you just do a cold plunge, you'll achieve all those goals. So it's not sufficient. And it's not necessary, because there's a lot of people who have never done a cold plunge who have achieved those things. So by critical thinking, that discipline activity doesn't have to be in your repertoire. And so you just do the logic on that and figure out, well, what does need to be in my repertoire to achieve my goals? And that's the way that you should come up with your personal disciplines, not by going online and finding some person who you've never met before who has totally different lifestyle than you and following their randomly chosen series of activities. And again, it's it may not be the phrases that people want to hear, but really what it comes down to is self-reflection and introspection, and you define your own path to discipline, and that's what it really is about.
Do you, Craig, do you think that the cold plunges are so infectious because people actually lack the clarity of the outcomes that they want? They're too busy consuming how everyone else is living.
I mean, I think it's a trendy thing, and you know, I mean, I love them. I just don't do them regularly, and you know, I think another thing that people get hung up on are these streaks. Like they've got to do something every single day in a row, or they're a bad person because they miss one, right? You know, especially if you're in these challenges and you know you miss a day, and then everybody makes fun of you, and you got to start from the start again. But back to the, you know, the cold plunge thing is they do feel wonderful. You know, that you know, some people get great clarity in it. It's not the only place you can get great clarity. It's not the only place that you can test your endurance. It's not the only place that you can build positive habits, but it is one of the effective things. And, you know, it's kind of fun in a strange way. And then it's just a lot of people are doing them. It also, you know, to steal a phrase from the marketing world, this guy, Dan Kennedy, says that in your business, you always want to have a dramatic demonstration of proof. Well, if I just sit there and meditate for 20 minutes, or if I sit and, you know, just sit and try and solve a problem in my life, that doesn't make for a very good Instagram video. But me sliding into a bucket of ice, it looks pretty cool on video. And so therefore, that's you know, another reason that some people do it and like to post about it and all that sort of stuff. And so there's a lot of reasons why it's kind of taken off, because it's effective, but also because it's really suitable to this day and age and the way that we consume things and get dopamine hits from others' appreciation of what we're doing. So it's, again, it's not necessarily sufficient, but it also can be beneficial. So there's a lot of ways to look at those things.
Sure.
I will
So
say there is
thanks for giving us
There is
Yeah.
irony in the fact that we're running our People Hunt 30-day 30 for 30
Cold punch challenge.
cold plunge challenge as this podcast is being recorded. But we do agree with the sentiment.
Yeah.
It's all things are a gateway, so there's like, obviously, everybody's heard that marijuana is a gateway drug. Well, there's gateway good behaviors. And it's like, I'll stop picking on cold plunge and I'll start picking on making the bed. There's this guy who I'm going to offend everybody in the United States military. There was a guy, was he an admiral? Was he a colonel? I can't remember. Was he in the
Yeah.
army?
Yeah.
We know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking
Admiral,
about. And he's
yeah,
got his
in the
whole
Navy.
shtick, like you start the day by making your bed. And again, making your bed is neither necessary nor sufficient for success. Does Elon Musk make his bed? I don't know. Does Joe Rogan? I have no idea. Like, you'd have to,
Yeah.
you take a look at all the richest people in the world. Do they actually make their bed? Chances are none of them do, because the maid makes the bed. And so does making your bed guarantee that you will be successful in other areas of life? No, the answer is no. It is not sufficient. It is not necessary. That if you made your bed, would you therefore be successful in other areas of life? No, it doesn't guarantee anything. And I think it's even hilarious, because what am I going to do when I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning? And that's what time I get up, because I like it, not because I'm disciplined, but because I like it, because nobody else is up. And I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and my wife gets up at about 6 or 6:30. Do I kick her out of bed? Because, like, honey, if I don't make the bed here, I am not going to be successful in life. How does that work?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
right.
So,
You're right about
picking on the making your bed thing is probably easier than picking on the cold plunge. Because if it was convenient, I probably would cold plunge regularly. It's just, it's not convenient to me. But all these things just have to be put in their proper place. Otherwise, there's 17 things that social media is trending as disciplined activities that I need to add in my day that would take me 4.5 hours. Where am I actually going to do the real work?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I actually met, rewinding a little bit, I met Ed at a mastermind that B had in Chino, Ed O'Keefe.
Oh,
So I didn't even know, great guy, read his book. I didn't even know that he was the one that first came up with the most disciplined man in the world moniker for you. That's amazing.
yeah, he's a great
Great guy.
dude, man. I've known that guy
Great
for
dude.
years and years and years.
Great dude. Let's take it, speaking of rewinding, let's take it all the way back. What was life like growing up for the most disciplined man in the world, Craig Ballantyne? Was he disciplined from birth
That's a
or
good
not?
question. Well,
Yeah.
certainly not disciplined from birth. I had a lot of bad habits. And I think that is one thing that makes me useful to people, and also that people gravitate towards too, in that I did build a lot of bad habits throughout, my life, as most people do. And I've shed, I would say, almost all of them at this point. So I grew up on a farm in Canada, and my father was an alcoholic for about 30 years. So the man drank 12 beers a day for 30 years, pretty insane. And so there's a theory that if your parent is an alcoholic, that you become more interested in controlling your external environment. So it's possible that if my dad was not an alcoholic, I still would have ended up the way that I did in terms of productivity and organization. But it is possible that my father's alcoholism and me getting dropped off. I remember every single day in grade school getting dropped off. The bus dropped me off. We had this really long laneway, and I'm walking in, and the question in my mind is always, which dad's going to be there today? Is it going to be drunk and angry dad? Is it going to be drunk and wild and crazy dad? Like we lived on a farm in Canada, and so we snowmobiled all the time, and we would get on a snowmobile, and the dude would just, like, no helmets, neither of us, 60 miles an hour on the snowmobile, chasing animals and falling off. And the guy, honestly, and this is I'm not making light of anything here, he must have driven drunk in his life over 1,000 times. Honestly, over 1,000 times. I cannot understand how God protected everybody else from him. Unbelievable. He got three DWIs, but it was back in like the 80s and 90s where they basically don't do anything. So anyways, I had all this influence from him. And because you don't know which dad is going to be there, it's this crazy, chaotic external environment at home. And
Mm.
therefore, psychologically, did that move me towards, well, if I can't control, or if there's, so much chaos, what can I control? And, if anybody's read my book, The Perfect Day Formula, it's like control what you can is the first C of the 3C formula in it. And cope with what you can't control is the second one, which we all have to do. So, anyways, that's how I grew up. And, I grew up kind of like B, not as poor as him, but I grew up working. I've probably worked 99% of the days of my life since I was 12 years old. And I got my first job at like $2.85 an hour when I was 12. Of course, I was working on a farm before that. And my mom didn't make much money. So, she was a receptionist at a factory. So we had hand-me-down clothes and hand-me-down hockey equipment and all that sort of stuff. And then I started being stupid in high school. Not to the point where it's like Pedro says, he's hanging out with gang members. I was, there's no gang members in Stratford, Ontario. There was like hockey teams, but there was no gangs. And so, I just started teenage drinking was very popular in a small town. Like in Canada, when you're a teenager, you drink beer and play hockey, or you play hockey and drink beer. It doesn't matter which order you do it in, but that's what you do. And so a lot of binge drinking that started around age 15 up till I was about 25 years old, as a frat boy for way too long. And so that was a stupid, undisciplined behavior that I had. But it was almost like Jekyll and Hyde, because from Monday to Friday, I was disciplined. I actually did homework in high school in the 90s, which, I mean, you guys, how old are you guys?
I'm
You're like
42.
10 years younger than me?
I'm 33, so
Yeah, you guys are so young. So like in the 90s, nobody did homework. It's insane. Uh, like 80s, I think I started high school in 89 to 94. No one did
Mhm.
homework in high school, but I did because I
I
wanted to get
definitely
into it.
didn't. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
I
like once you
definitely
got
didn't.
into like late 90s, 2000s, like you guys were doing like 6 hours of homework a day.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
in my era, nobody did. And so,
Yeah.
I had a part-time job. I went to the gym, and then I came home and did homework. I started working out about 16 and going to the gym
Mm.
every single day. And I was a lot bigger years and years ago than I was right now. And then
Mm.
from there, I went to university and more binge drinking and all that sort of stuff, and had anxiety attacks when I was like 28 or something. And then really cleaned up my life from there. So, I used to wake up late. I used to drink a lot, whatever, so everything that anybody's probably dealt with here. Um, I'm surprised I stayed out of
Yeah.
jail, but I did. And so then I just built systems to overcome those things, because all of those are problems that are figure outable, and uh, you can get rid of any bad habit with the right systems. And something that James Clear talks about in his Atomic Habit book, which I never took into account when I was changing them for myself, but the changing of your identity, the true belief in the change of the identity, that is like a cornerstone, because you can build a lot of systems. Like okay, I'm not going to have alcohol or junk food in the house. That's a system, right? Or I'm going to avoid situations. I'm going to avoid environments and people where there's alcohol or junk food. Those are systems too. But if you always say, like, I'm an alcoholic who, um, you know, I just have to avoid being in places where there's alcohol, that eventually that system is going to break. And so you have to be the type of person who doesn't drink. And when you're the type of person who doesn't drink, it's a whole lot easier to not drink.
Yeah. Yeah. We make that identity shift. So you cleaned up your habits. You were turbulence trainer came first before the perfect day formula,
Oh
before you wrote
yeah.
that
So
book.
I was a personal trainer starting in, I think I had my first training session in 94.
Okay.
I finished university, is what we call college in Canada, at 98. And then I did a master's degree until 2000. So you got to be kind of like organized and disciplined to pull all that stuff off. And then,
Yep.
I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach in the National Hockey League of all things. But I have more introverted tendencies than I do extroverted tendencies. And so I was not like Todd Durkin or Martin Rooney or any of these. You've ever see these high energy trainers that are just like, get so energized by pulling off a team session. No, I was exhausted. But I did become a personal trainer for a bit while I started building my online business. And I sold my first workout program on January 28th of 2001 through PayPal. It was a Word document that I sold through PayPal. And I did that for about 15 years. And then
Yeah.
Perfect Day Formula came along after people asked me, how do you get all this stuff done? And I started telling people and eventually put it all into a book.
Yeah. When did you publish that book? 2015, was it?
It's the very end of 2015. So I started writing it about 2012, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I was really stuck for a long time. And then I hired Tucker Max. So if anybody knows Tucker Max
Sure,
from,
Tucker
Wow.
Max.
yeah. So
I read
Tucker Max,
all his books in college. He's also another guy that's made a huge transformation. I just found out
unbelievably
recently.
huge
Yeah.
transformation. Yeah. Living on the farm and doomer
Yeah.
optimism is what he
Follow,
calls himself. Yeah. So anyways, he was on Tucker. So
yeah.
Tucker was on
Yeah.
Tucker. I mean, when I saw him
Oh,
on
was he
Tucker, I was like,
really?
that's
Yeah.
insane, man. Because
Yeah.
that's obviously got huge reach. But anyways, yeah. So Tucker
Yeah.
Max started a company called Book in a Box. Classic Tucker.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a done for you book where they would interview you and all this stuff. But I had written the book and already. So what I needed was an editor, and Tucker introduced me to an editor, and the guy, man, so he took 300 pages and he edited it down to 110 pages. And I'm like, can I have those 200 hours of my life back that you just edited out?
Right.
Anyways, Bedros will tell you, if he ever talks about writing Man Up, just how much of a bear that is to write a book. You gotta be disciplined. You have to be super disciplined to sit in a chair, right? And most people, the first thing when you say discipline, you do not think sitting in a chair. But sitting in a chair when you're for so long, your butt is numb, but you have to write a book because you have a deadline. That actually is one of the most disciplined things that I've done multiple times. So, anyways, yeah, I got that done in 2015 after like doing it wrong for a long time. And if anybody's gonna write a book, you have to get the outline right. Most people think, oh, just put a bunch of chapters together and stuff. No, you got to outline the book in a way that it just flows perfectly. That's the hardest thing, but if you nail that, that's what Ryan Holiday taught me, is you have to outline the book properly. So anyways,
Sure.
that book came out in 2015, and because I had thousands and thousands of questions from people who were like, well, what if I have 4 kids and 3.5 dogs and I'm a single mom, what do I do on Wednesday? I ended up having to write other books to answer all those questions.
Sure. Crazy story. I found your book and I read your book in 2016. So
Do you remember how you
that
found it?
I thought it was on social media.
Okay.
Thought it was on, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on social media. Um,
One of the most
so
surprising things is, sorry to cut you off, but one of the most,
Yeah.
like, I don't even know how this possibly could have happened, but Ed Milet mentions the perfect day formula
mhm.
in the first 10 minutes of the very first episode of his podcast in 2016. And I didn't even know who Ed Milet was till about 2018. So I have no idea how he got this book, how he
Yeah.
found out about this book. But he goes, yeah, you're going to want to listen. You're going to want to get Perfect Day by Ballantyne. Yeah, Ballantyne. He doesn't even say Craig Ballantyne. He just goes Ballantyne.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about morning routines for like 2 minutes at the start of the very first ever episode. Because a bunch of people would like say, they came to my coaching and I'm like, how did you find out about Perfect Day Formula? They go, Ed Milet. I go, what? And yeah, it's like, yeah, on his podcast.
It definitely could have been that, because at that time we were listening to the Ed Milet podcast, Andy Frisella, Bedros, like we were
Yeah,
in that
so
sphere.
random. But
I
anyway,
kind
so
of
you found it way
I
back
kind
then.
of found changed my life, number one. First and foremost,
Whoa, let me unpack that. How?
I was always obsessed with productivity and being the most productive person I could be within the walls of my office.
Uh-huh.
But it really opened my mind to the energy leaks that I had outside of just like work. At
Uh-huh.
that time I was working for somebody,
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean? But it really opened my mind to what I was attempting to control in my personal life and what I had to kind of let go. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
and
But it's
to me, sorry, sorry, Drew, but to
yeah.
me, so I read this book before I started writing the Perfect Day Formula. It's called The Art of Living by Sharon LaBelle. The Art of Living
Mm-hmm.
by Sharon LaBelle. And it is a translation of Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher's teaching. It is probably the easiest read on Stoicism you can ever find. So if somebody hears about Epictetus and Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and they've heard about Ryan Holiday and all his, he's got Stoic 365. Like, man, these are big books. You want to read something that just like clearly encapsulates what Stoicism is, and it's so easy to read, and you could like one most of the things are like one page or
Mhm.
2 pages, and I read that and I was like, this is the missing link, because it was very similar to what Joey was saying. It's like Epictetus says, taught me you can't control the external. And
Mhm.
people who are in cars listening to this, and there's somebody in front of you, who's braking, and you're like, "Argh," and but you can't control that person. You can't control the traffic. You can't control the rain. You can't control your boss if you have one. You can't control things. And when you
Mhm.
let go of that control, it's really freeing, man. I know it sounds
Yeah.
so ridiculous, but when I was a kind of an angry young man, I needed that. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
yeah, I can't control that, but there are certain things I can control. I control what goes through my mind. I control my thoughts, my words, and my deeds. And I control the setup of my
Mhm.
life. And I have the greatest control over my morning. I don't have a lot of control in the afternoon because, a lot of things go on and people bring their problems to you. And the whole reason you're controlling your day is so that you can control your freedom at night. And that's essentially the perfect day formula. And it was all because of
Yeah.
Epictetus. And then I tried to, pass that on to people like Joey, and I'm glad I did.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing.
it's funny for maybe a year. Joey got his hands on it before I did, and I don't know if he recommended it to me, but he was always saying like, "Oh, I got magic time. I got magic time."
Mm.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to ask like, "What's this fuck?" Like I feel like I should have
The
known it
magic time.
already.
What are
And
you? What are
I'm
you?
Uh,
What, watching Penn and Teller reruns or something?
and I'm like, what is
yeah.
this? Like, what is magic time? And I eventually buy the book and I read it. I'm like, oh my god, this is why Joey keeps saying magic time. Like,
Yeah.
it's so
How
funny.
long have you guys known
It
each
sounds,
other?
Uh, we're actually
s-
cousins,
Oh, you
so
yeah.
are.
yeah,
Oh,
So
okay.
by
So hopefully for a long
through
time.
marriage.
yeah, they're
Through
married.
Okay.
marriage.
Oh, okay. Got
Yeah.
it.
Through
The
marriage.
story is Joey was my first, like Joey. Long story short, but he would come to the family parties, and I was being brought into this family because my mom was getting married to his
I see.
cousin. So, and Joey would come in like looking like dapper as all hell, like every party. I'm like, I want to be just like that guy. Like,
Oh, very
and
nice.
so he ended up being my first mentor back.
Power
So I
of
start,
first impressions, man.
yeah, since I started my first
Yeah.
business in college. So
Very cool.
They were my corporate days. Now I'm Fuel Hunt t-shirts and shorts.
Hey,
yeah,
man.
All
That's
but if
all
you
that.
as far as I'm concerned, that's dapper.
but if you catch Joey at a wedding though, you'll be impressed.
Very nice.
I can still step out. I can still step out. So Craig, kind of directly, I would say indirectly, but really directly, I have you to thank for the relationship that I have and Drew and I have with B, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
I found you in the perfect day formula, and then fast forward, here we are now. I'm great friends with B and business partners. It's amazing. So directly and indirectly, I have you in the perfect day formula to thank for that.
Wow, that's very cool. And I mean, shout out to B.
Yeah.
That guy is just, I mean, he just goes from legend to legendary every year.
That is the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the truth. There's always the next level. There's always another switch to flip, for
Absolutely,
sure.
man.
Sure. All right. So we went through what brought you to the perfect day formula. A little time check here. Want to respect your time.
Yeah.
I listened to an episode of your show recently of Early to Rise,
Mhm.
and you went over 7 steps to beat overwhelm. You recall that? I have
I remember
I have the
doing it.
steps here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the steps here. So the Fuel Hunt community, they're all hard charging, right?
Hmm.
Lot on their plates. Sometimes seems like way too much to tackle. If there's one emotion or feeling that I hear from them constantly, it's that they're trying to beat the overwhelm. So
Yeah,
I think it would be really amazing if we just walk through those 7 steps quickly. I know that the
absolutely.
community would get a lot of value from it. So, like I said, I have them here. We can run through them and then maybe you can
Yeah,
add a little color to each
totally,
one. Sound
man.
good?
Totally. Love
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Love
So,
it.
the first step that you hit on was upstairs, and it was stopping the negative thoughts and the negative stories that you're telling yourself. Can you add a little color to that step?
Oh man, we in our my business is coaching these days, and we had a coaches meeting today, and we were talking about one of our awesome clients who you guys are making t-shirts for, which I appreciate. And she used the phrase, "I'm a magnet for drama." Well, if you're a magnet for drama, if you walk around saying, "I'm a magnet for drama," you are going
Mm,
to be a magnet for trauma. Dang.
yeah.
And so th- there's it's very, very, very important to check those negative thoughts. Remember what Epictetus taught me. You control your thoughts, your words, and your deeds, right? You don't control that it's
Mhm.
raining outside, but you control what you tell yourself. And it's very, very important. And we've probably all heard the phrase, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But you're also, in a weird way, the average of the voices and things that you say to yourself, the voices that you let into your head. And so you may not spend time with Bedros Keuilian, but if he's in your head all the time with a podcast every day, you're going to have a lot of positivity. But if you don't have positive voices in your head and you're just cycling through negative voices that you can't do certain things, that you can never be on time, you'll never be on time. If you, oh my gosh, I'm just so busy, I'm so overwhelmed. If you keep on telling yourself those things, you are reinforcing how you will feel. And so we need to stop telling ourselves negative stories and also inventing negative stories. So you can say, I'm a magnet for drama based on past experiences. But if you're looking ahead to like, oh my gosh, it's going to be such a crazy week, it's going to be so difficult and this, that, and the other thing. Well, now you just set your brain up to be in fight or flight mode and
Yep.
negative mindset. And you need to
It-
switch that because you're putting a lot of energy into making up stories. I remember just one little analogy on this. I remember B and I, we used to run these masterminds all the time. Bedros and I ran this mastermind in Nashville. And we went down, you have all the street performers down there, and you have the guy who paints himself in gold to be Elvis, right? You guys ever seen this? Like, and I'm sure there's probably some in
uh-huh.
Philadelphia
Oh,
too,
yeah.
right? And I'm like, I look at him and I go, Bedros, look how hard that guy works so that he doesn't have to work. Like, he's working harder. Like he could go and get a job and make more money and work like less hard than it would be to paint himself in gold and stand still all night. Like I don't understand why some people make life harder than it needs to be. And that's what
Yeah.
we do when we tell ourselves negative stories and that things are going to be hard and so on and so forth because you use up so much mental energy. And the entrepreneur life is already a roller coaster, and you don't need to make it more of a roller coaster by when things are a little bit difficult, just like running these negative stories through your head that make it 10 times worse when none of
Yep.
these things are going to come true. So you got to be careful with that. The phrase fear, false expectations appearing real. Man, think about that one.
Mhm.
False expectations appearing real. Fear, man, none of that stuff comes true. So don't make up negative stories.
Yeah, I mean, what you said translates not only to entrepreneurship, but also as a parent. If
Totally.
you make a mistake as a parent and you're beating yourself up all day and saying, I'm the worst parent, I've failed my kids today, that you're going to, first of all, what are you attracting and manifesting? Number one. Second of all, it takes so much energy to replay and recreate that story in your mind all day long. You know what I mean?
When I was
Um,
younger, I went to anger management therapy, and um, the guy was like, man, you just walked in here. It looked like, obviously, like you go in there, you kind of feel a little bit ashamed because you're in anger management theory, but because you just walked in here like you had the weight of the world on your shoulders. And it's like, a few questions. He goes, why are you so hard on yourself? And eventually it came and he goes, yeah, man, almost every entrepreneur that we work with is very, very hard on themselves. And this is a double-edged sword, right? Because if we weren't hard on ourselves, the business, we wouldn't hit the business goals and deadlines and all that sort of stuff. And so it it can be helpful, but it can also be hurtful. It's helpful to a point, and then when you cross that line, being hard on yourself, man, it's just, there's no benefit to it. So you got to give yourself some grace sometimes. You got to demand and have, it's not being hard on yourself. You have to have high standards and high expectations for yourself, but but being hard on yourself is, like, nobody coaches that way anymore. Like, nobody goes out and just yells at the people anymore. You coach people now. You don't yell at them and be hard on them.
Yeah,
That in that
for,
in that
for sure.
negative way.
Yeah. The other thing we touched on social media a little bit earlier, and what social media will have you believing discipline is. And I think there's another thing that goes on social media. It'll have you majoring in the minors. It'll have you cutting
Yeah.
people. It'll have you cutting people out of your life, right? Before it has you focusing on the thoughts between your ears, trying to solve your problems by removing people from your life when the real problem is the story that you're telling yourself, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I would say the thing I hate that I see on social media the most these days are these posts from, especially these faceless pages, where it says, if you shut yourself away for 6 months and become a lone wolf, uh and drop all your friends and all this stuff. I'm like, this just sounds like a great recipe for creating a nation of mass shooters, like, everybody
Yeah.
get isolated and hate everybody else. And, like, no, that's not how you do. What you should do is you should go and find more positive people and be around positive people and get
Sure.
lifted up by positive people. So, and then that'll that'll help fix the negativity between your ears. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that is a really, really great point, Joy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Second step to beating overwhelm, switching to a positive mindset. So we talked about the negative stories, now switching to a positive mindset. And on your show, you mentioned you described reframing, but I don't think you really used the
Uh,
word reframing. And you just, which I love about you, Craig, like your advice is always so like practical and tactical. You were just like, look, like there's people out there that have it way worse than I do. Like, let me just use
yeah.
that as a springboard to get into a positive mindset. It could be worse.
That's the CBW is the phrase in our house. My wife makes fun of me all the time, because she'll be like describing something. Like, for example, when we moved down to Playa del Carmen a few weeks ago, we came down here because we have our children in Mexico. They get a Mexican passport and a Canadian passport, and we use the same hospital down here. And she gets the amazing birth experience that she wants. And so we were living in Vancouver, and we moved down here. And the day we moved down is the day that a hurricane's arriving. And so, we've never been through a hurricane before. So we're like kind of freaking out. None of the Mexicans were freaking out. They were all buying like chicken wings and soda. And I was like stocking up in water and at the grocery store. And she was like, man, it's a hurricane and I'm pregnant. And I'm like, yeah, but it could be worse, like, and I came up with something else. And she goes, stop it with, CBW. Like, that's what I always am. It's like, it could be worse. And so back
Yeah.
to the example that you used, Joey, is that there is somebody out there who's trying to achieve the same goals as you, or maybe even greater goals than you, and they're starting in worse circumstances. And
Mhm.
I always think of Oprah when I think of this, because Oprah was, obviously she was Black growing up in the 70s or whatever, and she got on TV, and she had been raped and all this stuff. And I mean, talk about coming from
Yeah.
it could have been worse. Like, okay, she could have had some other things happen to her, but it couldn't have been much worse. And she
Yeah.
became very successful. And so there is
Mhm.
somebody out there who has, maybe you don't have, you're like just above broke. Okay, well, there's somebody who's like $20,000 in debt and they're doing more than you. And there's somebody who doesn't have a supportive partner, and you do, and they're doing more than you, and so on and so forth. Like, there's somebody out there who's doing more than you, and that should inspire you to do more. And it really comes down to reframing your brain around situations where things go bad. It's not win or lose. I didn't lose this week. It's win or learn. And that's a quote from Nelson Mandela, who had a lot of things going against him. He just said, it's not win or lose. It's win or learn. There's always a lesson. And that's what entrepreneurship is. It's you're going to get kicked in the face every day. You're going to have great days, but even on a great day, you're still going to get kicked in the face once or twice. And you'd be like, you know what? I can't feel bad about it. I just got to learn something from this so that it doesn't happen again. And, just the older I get, the easier it is for me to deal with stuff like that. Whereas you see the kind of beginner entrepreneur who's hitting the panic button because, they got a refund or something and it's the end of the world. Well, it's not the end of the world. You're going to get way worse days than refunds. So, win or lose, or win or learn, what's the lesson here? What can we do in the future to avoid this and onward?
For sure.
That's something I always try to remind even myself at times, but my family, like someone would gladly take your problems, no matter what problems you're having today. Like
That's
someone
a great
else
point, man.
would
And what
accept them
about
gladly.
like for your kids, it's tough to say this one, but to people that are our age, you can go 5 years ago. What about 5 years ago, wouldn't they want these problems? Like,
Mhm.
remember the days you prayed for this, when your kids are crying in the middle of the night. Well, remember when you didn't have kids? Remember when you weren't even married? Remember when you didn't have a girlfriend or boyfriend? Remember how you prayed for this? Well, you got it now. So let's enjoy it.
Well,
Remember, if you got a team member that does something that upsets you, remember when you were doing everything on your own and you were working like 70 hours a week? Now you got a team, be grateful for it.
it's a lot of serendipitous moments. Like so our drop, I don't know if you saw it, was this is what you prayed for, one of our teas
Oh
this month.
yeah.
So we'll have to
Yeah.
get you that one, Craig.
Oh, I appreciate it.
All right, let's hit step 3 to beating overwhelm, planning and preparation. This one is near and dear to my heart, as you probably imagine. We have a rule of the few: if you have no plan, expect no progress. I know you're a planner, Craig, as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, planning and preparation is the genius behind anything. Your favorite movie, nobody's just getting up there and making up the lines. Joe Rogan has a new Netflix out. He's not just making stuff up. Like he has planned and prepared the jokes in that thing over and over again. And so everything that you think is amazing has been planned and prepared to the next level. And I know we're running out of time, so I don't want to spend much more time on that, but planning and
Yeah.
preparation is like the genius.
Yes, I agree. Differentiator. All right, next step for the Amish hour. Can you touch on the Amish hour?
Mm.
I love the term creative. I don't know if it was something that you made up, but I love
No, I
it.
didn't make it up. I can't remember where I got it from, but in my book, I talk about the reverse alarm. You need, so people are overwhelmed because they either get up late or they hit snooze in the morning and then they're running late. And then that's like knocking down that little negative domino that, by the end of 5 dominoes is knocking down the door, a giant domino. And you get up late because you didn't get to bed on time.
Yeah.
I've coached people since, I had my first coaching event in 2007, but I've been personal training people since 1994. And the absolute key to success, aside from planning preparation, is getting to bed on time. It is so cornerstone, keystone important. It is the most boring thing in the world. No one's ever going to make a viral video about getting to bed on time, but it is like the linchpin. And so if you get to bed on time, then you will get up on time. If you get up on time, you will get your stuff done on time and you will be productive and rested and all that stuff. Now, how do you get to bed on time? Well, you got to set the reverse alarm, because I spent years going to bed an hour late and being ticked off and tired. And it wasn't until like, an hour before bed, you set an alarm and you turn off all your electronics. And if you have the discipline to stick to that, and you're disciplined because you can cold plunge and you can make your bed. And I know that you can stick to the reverse alarm. So when you do that, everything else will flow from it.
We talked next step, which is 5, I believe, millionaire morning routine. We touched on that a little bit earlier, right? I think
Yeah, with the magic time.
your definition of discipline, I absolutely love. So that morning routine has to be you getting up, focused work, level 10 effort on your level 10 problems in your life, right? Would you agree?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This one is the next step 6, a non-negotiable cutoff time. And again, in the social media world, it's no days off. I'm like the sun. You know what I mean? I'm always up.
Yeah.
I'm always working. But the the non-negotiable cutoff time for your workday is so key. Do you want to explain that just a little bit?
Yeah, listen, I would imagine most people here are listening, they like football, and so what makes a football game magical? The fact that it goes on for 43 days? No, because it has a hard cutoff. Like when they hit that 2-minute warning, that's when, like, the most exciting part of the game is. Certainly with basketball too, and it wouldn't be magical if it was endless. And so it's the same with our day. That if we have a hardcore cutoff in our day, then we will make more of the time. And if we can work until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, we'll just screw around in the daytime and you won't get any more done. You'll just have screwed around and wasted your life. And when I
Mm.
hung around Bedros all the time, before the COVID, we would run these masterminds. And on Wednesday, I've flown down from Canada. We ran this mastermind. It's Wednesday. It's 5 o'clock. And he goes, "All right, see you later, dude." And I'm like, "What? I just flew down from Canada." And he goes, "It's date night. 5 o'clock every Wednesday is the start of date night. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It's the end of my day. And I give this time to my wife." And I was like, whoa, if this guy, who at the time had 55 employees at HQ, had 550 Fit Body locations, had all these other things on the go, if he can set a deadline and stick to it,
Mm.
anybody can. And it forces you to be more productive during the day, which is another thing that I've found out is, when you get kids and I'm not a single guy anymore who would work till 7 or 8 at night. And again, I'd just be messaging people half the time when I was working till 7 or 8 at night, not doing anything. Now I only do work during the day so I can go be with my kids. They're a great deadline enforcer. And so you need that because it'll help you say no, because a lot of people just need to say no to all their little projects that make them overwhelmed, and it'll keep you focused on the major projects, and you won't feel as overwhelmed when you actually box yourself in a little bit more.
Sure. Structure is freedom. I heard that once from a very wise guy. Yeah. Um, Step 7 to beat overwhelm. Last one, accountability. Uh, the Fuel Hunt community you mentioned earlier. So the importance of surrounding yourself with positive people that are going to uplift you and tell you the truth, but also tell you what you're capable of, not what you are incapable of. Right?
Mhm.
Fuel Hunt community does that. The other thing that the Fuel Hunt community does is offer accountability. It's a whole tribe of people that make sure that you're going to follow through on what you say you're going to do. And I think that step 7 here to beat overwhelm, accountability will resonate with a lot of the Eagles that are listening. Do you want to add a little bit of color to accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. The visual that we give people is that most of us, so if the Fuel Hunt community, there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff in it. And even if it's not, you can
Mm.
still take this analogy, but we say that most of the time you're on lonely entrepreneur island. If you're out there, and even if you're not an entrepreneur, but you're a high performer, you're still surrounded by people that aren't. You're an eagle, right? So you're an eagle on this lonely eagle island. And you're surrounded by people who love you, who may not say the most positive things. They may get jealous and say negative things when they hear about your success. They love you, but they do those things. And so you're around these people who try and pull you down into bad habits. And so if you didn't have a supportive tribe or community or accountability, man, eventually they'd wear you down and they would pull you down, like the crabs in the bucket that Bedros has in Man Up. And it's
Mm.
very, very important that you are around people who are supportive and who demand more of you. And I think that was the greatest thing that Bedros ever did for me, was demand more of me. He provided a great role model example. And so I looked at him and I was like, I want to do kind of like Drew saying, you want to be like Joey. Like, there were certain things about Bedros. I was like, man, I got to be like that. But he also saw in me that there was a much greater ability and talent and I could do more. And he held me to a higher standard. And so having people hold you to a higher standard is very important. and then give you the accountability to follow through, because people get overwhelmed when they have a lot on their plate and they don't know exactly which thing to do. And so they don't prioritize properly. And yeah, they're busy, but they don't get done the important stuff. So your
Yeah.
accountability partners need to help you prioritize the important things and then hold you accountable to doing the important things. Because
Mhm.
you can spend 8, 9, 10, 11 hours in busyness and not accomplish very much. And you could actually
Yeah.
spend 4 hours in very focused work and accomplish exponentially more than a person who is busy for 12 hours. So there's a lot to the accountability. And when you find somebody who you deeply do not want to disappoint, you will move mountains in your life to make sure that you do the right work.
You
For
are who
sure.
you are who you hunt with.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
man.
what we like to
That's
Yes,
say over
great.
indeed.
here.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks for
That's
taking
such
a
a great
tour.
line.
7 step. Yeah. Thanks for taking a tour through the 7 steps. I know we're running up on time here. So one final question for you, Craig. There are a lot of parents in the fuel hunt community,
Mhm.
right? So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned thus far as a father that could add value to their lives? They're always on the hunt to be present mothers and fathers. So I'm sure any advice or any lesson that you've learned, the biggest one would be helpful for them to hear.
Well, it's funny. So we round back to Ed O'Keefe, and he gave me the best parenting advice, which may not be applicable to older parents, but I've got one for them too. So you can be tired and your wife can be tired, but you can't be tired at the same time, was the best advice that I got as a new parent, because everything breaks down when you're tired and you get snappy and all that type of stuff. And it's kind of like not getting to bed on time. It's just not, it's a negative domino, it knocks down. And that just led to Michelle and I communicating and planning and preparing, and our sleep schedules and things have worked out very well because of that simple advice. Now,
Mm.
that's not going to help somebody who's got maybe 12-year-old kids. But I will say probably the most important thing is to make sure that you park your phone. You need to have your phone out of your hands as much as you possibly can when you're around your kids. And so I've had clients make a ritual with their kids of when they come home and they put the phone in the phone bed, and they're not allowed to touch the phone until the kids give them permission to go back and play with their phone because the kids want to go and do something else. Or
Mhm.
get accountability from your partner or spouse and say, I'm going to be phone free for this long. One of my business partners, he uses an app called the Opal app, and it blocks you from being on whatever you want to block yourself from for certain hours, and he
Yeah.
blocks all stuff from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And so his phone's useless. And I know that I have a great day when I can't find my phone. And, I'm focused at work. I'm focused with the kids. I'm like, I haven't seen my phone in 8 hours. That's awesome. That's a great day for me. So put your phone away.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. So where can members of our community find you? Where can they find the perfect day formula? Why don't you give us a little outro here, including maybe anything that you got going on? I think you have a mastermind coming up maybe in September too.
Yeah. So you guys are making t-shirts for my mastermind in September 11th to 13th down in South Beach, Miami. And we will help people grow their businesses, but improve their personal standards as well. And you can hit me up on Instagram at Real Craig Ballantyne. I'm there every single day, and I answer all my direct messages personally. And then Perfect Day Formula, Amazon. Um, and then the other thing I'll say is I have a new book coming out called The Dark Side of Discipline, and that'll be in January 2025. So
Wow.
it'll go deeper into, we have the 10 standards of discipline that help people, transfer that discipline they have with the cold plunges into all areas of their life, so they give the level 10 effort it deserves.
Amazing. Amazing. So your bottom's probably pretty numb sitting in the seat right now.
Ah,
Right in the
that's right,
book for a
man.
little. I'm looking forward to it. Before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, and I'm sure Drew feels the same way. Thank you for the belief that you have in what we're doing with Fuel Hunt, with our mission. Thank you for always repping proudly.
Yeah.
I don't say it enough. Every time I see, one of your videos or listen to your show, you're always giving us a hat tip, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I mean, I was put here on this earth to believe in other people, because sometimes they need a little more belief in themselves. So that's what I
Yeah.
do.
All right, Craig. Thank you. Drew, anything? Sign us off.
No, you got the sign off?
Yeah. I'll sign us off. I'll
All
sign us
right.
off. A
I gotta run,
reminder for the
guys.
few. All right, I'll see you. A reminder for the few. Always choose hard work over handouts. Always choose effort over entitlement. No one owns you. No one owes you. You're one of the few. Now let's hunt.